Hey y'all, how's it going? I see that everybody is filing in. Go ahead and while I come in, get a cup of coffee, maybe water, seltzer, maybe some pretzels over at the sidebar. I am very happy and excited to see you all starting to file in. So, as I had just said a couple minutes ago, if you wouldn't mind, just give me a hand raise to let me know that you can hear this. And also, if you want to share where you are joining from today, by just going to the Q&A panel, Q&A feature in GoToWebinar, and throwing your city, maybe your state or your organization name. Maybe none of those things. If you just want to say hi or what's up, you can do that as well. I would appreciate that. My name is Evan Brenner. I am the marketing content team lead here at Geographic Solutions. I am extremely grateful to be here today with Steve Wooderson and Kathy West Evans from CSA VR, and also Joe Devon from GAAD. Thank you so much all for being here. Today, this Pathways to Employment is actually our first of the new year of 2025. So also Happy New Year. That it's going to be a great year, and we have a lot of webinars actually planned for this year. So we have a couple of different series, and please look out for those on our website at geographicsolutions.com, and you will see updates on when we're going to have next ones. But today we are covering vocational rehabilitation and accessibility. The name of today's presentation is Empowering Abilities. A little bit of housekeeping before we get going. We welcome all questions, any questions. In fact, I really think that the questions are one of the best things about this program because it helps us to learn something and it also helps you to learn something. So I appreciate any and all questions, and please go ahead and put those into the Q&A pane, which is a little bit different than your normal webinar, I guess, because here we have a Q&A pane, and instead of the chat, we ask that you put them into the Q&A pane. That helps us to kind of moderate the questions and then helps to get them answered at the end. So we will make sure that any and all questions that are asked, we will go over at the end of this presentation as time allows. We have a captions feature. So GoToWebinar has a captions feature, and if you look at the bottom right-ish of your screen, it's still in beta, but it works relatively well. And if you just click that button at the bottom, you will be able to get captions. And last but not least, I can't think of the last but not least thing, but we're just going to go ahead and move on, and I'll remember as we go. Here's our agenda for today. So we are going to talk a little bit about the series, Pathways to Employment, where we've gone and where we're going. We'll meet our panelists, talk a little bit about who Geographic Solutions is, have our panel discussion, and finish with the Q&A. So the Pathways to Employment series started in around late 2020. The whole basis of this series and the what we hope to gain by this, what we hope to do, is just discuss all the different pathways that somebody can take to gain employment or to upskill or to find benefits. And so hence the reason for the logo. It's, we really like to talk about all the different roads that somebody explores in their career, all in the name of jobs. And so starting back in December of 2020, we kicked this off with actually an episode on reentry employment, and we moved from there. We've covered everything from upskilling to careers for students. It's reentry employment, as I said before, and just really like a wide spectrum of all the different pathways that somebody would take. So I'd like to introduce our GSI webinar team. My name, as I said before, is Evan Brenner. I'm the marketing content team lead. I also have Lisa Grimes, who is our digital marketing analyst, kind of in the background producing, along with Don Compton, who is our graphics and multimedia team lead. And now I'd like everybody to meet our expert panelists. From left to right, I would like you to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about your background, and I'll start with Steve.
Hi, Evan. Thanks for having us. I'm Steve Wooderson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation. That's the membership organization for the public VR programs across the country. And I've been in this business since January the 5th of 1981. So I've been at it for a while, but I started my career as a VR counselor in Missouri and eventually made my way to the state of Iowa, where I was the director of the VR program there for a while. And now I'm with CSAVR for the last 14 years. And at the moment, I'm just west of the Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Thank you, Steve, and welcome. And to Kathy.
Thank you, Evan, and thank you for having us. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you sit in the country. My name is Kathy West Evans, and I also work for the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation, acronym CSAVR. And it's a long career. Sometimes, Steve, you feel like you're just born into this career. Would you agree with that? So I started in 1978, and I started in the community agency and worked for the Washington State Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I sit east of Seattle. I worked for the federal agency, the Rehab Services Administration, before coming to CSAVR, where I lead our national employment team. And that is a representative that works with business from each one of the 78 VR agencies across the country. So we can build a team behind our businesses and work with counselors across the country and our partners on building career paths for individuals with disabilities. And thank you for having us.
Thank you. And to Joe.
Thank you for inviting me once again, Evan. My name is Joe Devon, and I got into this in a different way. My dad was struggling to do his online banking because the banking website was inaccessible. The bank website was inaccessible, and my dad had started losing his hearing and his eyesight. So getting to the bank was very difficult in your mid-80s. And I got upset, so I wrote a little blog post proposing a day of awareness for developers like myself and anybody involved in creating digital content, which includes like applications, websites, and things like that. And this thing went viral from the very first year. We made it happen like 6 months later. We were already in 16 cities around the world. Within a few years, we reached an audience of 200 million on social media. So obviously it struck a chord with people. And 10 years later, we started the GAAD Foundation, which I am chairing. And to actually make some money personally, I have a company called Audits, where we do accessibility audits.
Thank you very much. And welcome to each of you. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for your time of being here today. And I will also say, just as we move to the next slide and talk about the company, that I am extremely grateful to Steve, Joe, and Kathy for meeting with me. And not only did this take just being here today, but there was also a level of practice that goes into it. So I'm grateful for your time that you devoted to making sure that this presentation is great. Geographic Solutions. A lot of you folks out there might already know us, but if not, established in '92. Headquartered in beautiful Palm Harbor, Florida, which is on the West Coast, kind of sandwiched in between Clearwater Beach and Tarpon Springs. West Coast office in Salinas, European office in London. We have close to 500 full-time employees who are solely focused on developing our solutions. All right, and without further ado, let's get into what I like to funnily call the meat and potatoes of the presentation. I'm not quite sure who made that up, but that's always the thing that comes to my mind first. So let's get into it. In talking about this presentation, we thought to ourselves, well, what is vocational rehabilitation? And there might be somebody out there who doesn't know, or maybe somebody is just looking for a refresher, or maybe somebody is just curious. What is vocational rehabilitation? And I'd like to start with Steve.
Thanks, Evan. And Kathy and I will share this response. At its core, we help folks with disabilities return to work, find new employment, retain or gain skills necessary for employment. And there are a variety of different services that can be provided: career counseling, skills training, job career placement, workplace accommodation, support services, working with business. So we're the full meal deal when it comes to assisting folks with disabilities move into, maintain, and retain their work. It began as the First World War was winding down, and it was initially targeting veterans with disabilities, but soon after that extended to all civilians with disabilities. So you can imagine, over the 100+ years, we've been through a number of changes in those years, but that's our core mission still. It is funded by the federal government, and there's a state match requirement, and that means that every state, territory, and the District of Columbia has a public program. Some of you have 2 programs. That state also has a separate program for folks who are blind and visually impaired. It is an eligibility program, and the key tenets of that are it's an individual with a disability. It impacts their ability to work, maintain, or retain employment. And then, just to close my response out, I do want to mention that the public VR program doesn't do it alone. We work closely and rely on the expertise of many community providers in each state. VR agency may contract with those providers to deliver specific services, augment what the VR agency may not have the infrastructure to provide. And they're really critical to the overall success of the profession. So that's my one of the world anyway. Hope I didn't steal any of your thunder, Kathy.
Oh, it sounds all so familiar, Steve.
Yeah.
So, as Steve says, we have 78 agencies across the country. We're in every state, the territories, and the District of Columbia. And, from a personal view of vocational rehabilitation, I think we're all aware that 28% of the people in this country are individuals with disabilities. Disability happens at any time during your life and any time during the employment life cycle. So the focus on really bringing out the talents and looking at careers for individuals and working with our business customers to employ the talent and keep people working after they experience a disability is really kind of the heart and soul of the work that we do. And what makes vocational rehabilitation, sometimes known as VR, which is not virtual reality, vocational rehabilitation is that we are based on a plan, an individualized planning process, understanding that each individual is different and that when you acquire or are born with a disability, and that's a wide range of conditions, it impacts people in different ways. So whether we're working with an individual on looking at, key pieces of accessibility and assistive technology, planning your career, how it all fits to support the employment, the careers, and independence of those individuals looks different from person to person. And I think that's one thing that makes our program unique and really enables us to do great work with a person and then also take that same approach with business. Every business is different, and we look at it that way, and go in by asking and planning and then connecting both the individual customer, the candidate, to the business. And I think that that's a unique approach that comes from that individualized perspective.
Thank you. And Joe, oh, sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to cut you off. And to Joe, on the same level, on the same note, what is accessibility? How would you describe accessibility?
Sure. First of all, just to be clear, we're talking about digital accessibility, and digital accessibility refers to making sure that any digital product, and this includes your cell phone, an app on your cell phone, so the hardware, the software, a website, a kiosk, any kind of digital technology needs to work for people with disabilities. They need to be able to interact with the technology, understand, navigate, register. Like what often happens is you'll have people that are putting in some effort, but in terms of making their entire application accessible, but they don't think about user flows, so they might not allow you to register or log in, and then put in some energy on other parts of the application, but they never thought about the fact that they're completely locking out their users by not allowing them to register or log in or log out is really important as well. So it's really providing some equivalent access for all of certainly the major features of an application, ideally the entire application.
Thank you, Joe. And with that said, where is the intersection between vocational rehabilitation and accessibility? How do they intersect, or do they not intersect? And I think they do, but it just was one thing that came to my mind. Like, where is that cross point? And so, starting with Steve and just working around the room, I could see this as just a collaborative discussion. But where do they intersect?
Wait, before you start, Steve, I'm just going to say VR is also one of the digital technologies that is included in accessibility, but the other kind of VR, virtual reality. So.
Good point. Yeah. Well, Evan, I think for us, it's employment. I think that's the intersection between the two. That it's deeply embedded in our legislative mandate. It really emphasizes equal access, prohibits discrimination, and for me, almost VR and accessibility are the same from my point of view. One can't exist from the other. And then I think Joe's examples of the technology that from a digital standpoint, that enhances that. And if you think of the issues related to employment, I think that's really where we can be kind of profound in our thinking today by saying those are the areas that really impact both from a person wanting to go to work and accessing those tools, and from an individual who needs to gain those skills in order to be able to go to work as well. So that's my one over the world anyway. Kathy?
Yes. I'll build upon that again because I think accessibility, both, you know, digitally, or if you're looking at someone who may be blind and, we're looking at some type of transportation solution, not necessarily digital, but, that's part of what we all live, right? If you look at things like ramps and you look at the accessibility that we all use every day, many people don't know that texting that we use quite frequently was originally developed as a tool for accessibility for individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, and that's gone mainstream. So obviously, accessibility and independence for individuals, as well as accessibility in the workplace, are key elements of the work that we do. Supporting people in their training and their independence and getting to and from work, however that looks. As we have remote work, again, digital accessibility plays in on that. So it's looking at the needs of that person and really driven there. And that's built into the law that we're funded through, the legislation that we're funded through the Rehabilitation Act, where even Title V of the Act focuses on accessibility for all people in services and access to those opportunities. And again, what we find when we're working with business is that we may look at an accessibility tool for an individual and it ends up benefiting him. Captions, mainstream.
Want me to weigh in,
Did
Evan?
you want me to add anything else?
And I would go to Joe. That was good. Thank you.
Yeah. What's interesting is as the world becomes more technology driven, there's more and more intersection. So when you're doing work remotely, it's almost all digital accessibility. This very platform being a prime example of it. But at work as well, almost everybody does work that is somehow or other touches a computer. And any place where it touches that computer, you need to make sure that there's digital accessibility. And in addition to that, there's all kind of assistive technology that might just provide extra features that can be used in order to help with employment. So every aspect of that really touches accessibility. But beyond that, I do agree with everything that Stephen and Kathleen said.
Thank you both. And I just wanted to follow up and say a couple different things. One in looking back on the history of Voc Rehab, I think, and I may or may not be right here, but was the first VR program the Soldiers Rehabilitation Act of 1918? Was that kind of where it started?
That was the entree, World War I, and then there was the Smith-Fest Act that was passed right after that that expanded that to all civilians with disabilities.
Okay, cool. And that's one thing I learned in just researching for this presentation. So it's cool I love doing this because I also get to learn something as well. And another thing too is VR. I often think to myself, like, should I write this as vocational rehabilitation or VR? I always think, is this going to be taken as actual, virtual reality? So I think that's a funny thing to discuss. Here's where I hope that we can get the audience involved. I love this program called Slido, and it seems to work pretty well from time to time. And so, what I wanted to ask the audience here is to take out your phones, much like I am doing right here, and go to your camera app and scan the QR code if you would like to. And if you prefer not to scan the QR code, please go ahead and go to slido.com, type in the number, and you can also participate that way. But this I love to do because I like to get a little bit of audience participation. If you could, take out your phone, scan the QR code, or go to the website and let me know which of the answers below is an accessibility best practice. I just thought that this would be a little fun thing to get the blood flowing. If you want to also stand up at your desk or wherever you are right now, or if you cannot stand, that's okay as well. If you just want to stretch and put your arms in the air, or do whatever you would like to. This is that good part of the presentation where I hope to instill a little bit of fun. And actually, I think that this is kind of it's not a trick question, but I think that everybody is kind of maybe figuring out that, yes, all of these are accessibility best practices. And of course, there are more than just these as best practices, but these are a few. So in that case, I would like to move on to our next question. And so what I would like to know is AI. It's a huge topic, and it's all over. There is a lot of talk about AI, and I want to know, how is AI affecting vocational rehabilitation, and on the other hand, accessibility. How have you noticed that AI is affecting these industries? And so, starting with Steve, how is AI affecting it? How have you seen AI in the industry?
Yeah, I know this. It is the buzz. We're spending a lot of time trying to really get our brains around this. I want to be sure that I'm clear that I see two sides. It's changing the way that vocational rehabilitation does its business. Obviously, the way that we go about interacting with our environment, and obviously impacting those that we are serving, both our business and individual customers. So I think I want to acknowledge that we're really on the front end of really even starting to understand that impact. From internal operations, we're seeing artificial intelligence being developed, and some have been actually deployed that assist with communications between the VR staff and the VR customer, even to the point of reminders and setting up appointments and doing some initial information gathering. Agencies are also using it, our state VR agencies, in accessing and interpreting federal and state policy and practice. And we've also begun to see some of that information and interviewing, believe it or not, which just still blows my mind, between the individual counselor, staff professional, and the customer, that being artificial intelligence, which then begins to develop a profile, begins to develop questions and probing of things. I also know that ultimately that individual counselor is going to be the one making that personal decision. But so it's pretty pretty crazy when we begin to see that it may even be able to help with identifying work interests and abilities. But we still have ways to go on understanding how AI really maximizes our individual customers' increased access to employment. I think at its best, it should increase the opportunities for our customers to obtain skills that are needed to enter into the workplace. I think a challenge is that AI is built based upon, those algorithms that are generated by humans, by people, and those are going to be inherently biased. So I guess being a non-AI understanding guy, my final thought is that it's really paramount upon us in the disability community to be vigilant, to be involved in the inclusion of the structure and the design of these products. So I'm not sure I really answered the question. I probably gave more questions than I can offer.
No, I think that was a great answer, and I think that there definitely is a lot of opportunity to, to discuss and dissect and to review and to re-review, especially from a bias standpoint, and just making sure that AI is fair and however it's used. So I think that that's a really good perspective. Kathy, from the customer side, AI in vocational rehabilitation.
Yes, well, we've talked about a few of the benefits of AI when we're seeing things like captioning, even though this platform GoTo has it in beta, it's pretty good and it's getting better all the time, right? So the captioning, and and that extends to a number of languages. So there's a lot of benefit there. Voice to text. So, when individuals, are looking at that, or text to voice. So if you can't read and you need to transcribe your text to voice, there's great applications for AI there. And it is getting better. It learns quickly. And, where we've used these as accommodations unique to individuals with disabilities, again, they're now becoming mainstream. So as you're driving, hands-free driving, there's, your maps can tell you where to go. So, there's a lot of applications there. Much like Steve alluded to, I think the number one barrier for individuals with disabilities is attitudinal, and that's built on assumptions that people make based on a medical diagnosis of what someone can or can't do. And that's one of the discussions we have a lot with our business customers. So as we're building these tools, working with company partners like a Microsoft, I have to shout them out there. They're in my home state, but working closely with them to make sure that as they're building these tools, they're hiring and employing individuals with disabilities so that that perspective is built in, and that the potential bias based on those attitudinal barriers is addressed in the building of the tools. And I know that we've had well over 150 individuals hired by Microsoft alone who are engineers for that company and are part of developing these solutions. So I think that's a key piece as we develop the tools, particularly when we use these tools for things like um, resume screening. And Steve, we heard this example just recently, and I've seen it. My husband is deaf, and when he first started applying for jobs because he listed that he had attended a school for the deaf and Gallaudet University, the assumption was that you can't communicate. That's not always true, right? There's a lot of people with hearing loss that speak very well. So again, you know, being careful how we use those tools, who builds them. And I think one of our federal partners who is blind said that she was talking to AI about something and shared that she was blind, and the response from the AI was, "Oh, I'm sorry." So again, avoiding those attitudinal barriers, and including a diverse range of people as we build the tools, so that we're not building them on those attitudinal barriers that become bias in using the technology. But this is more Joe's area of expertise, and I see him shaking his head, so that's a good thing.
Joe?
It's interesting. So I co-host a podcast called Accessibility and Gen AI. And in order to produce that, my producer is Ben Churchill. Some of you may have heard of the Blind Film Critic or the Tommy Edison Experience, which is a hilarious YouTube channel. And Ben is the partner and produces that as well. So he has a ton of experience, and he has his own workflow in order to create captions. And we do use a service that, and I'm going to go into like personal detail because that'll sort of help answer the question, I think, quite well. So the service that we use does have an AI as the base to create a transcript and captions, but there's a human in the loop. And pretty much any of the people that are really smart today building AI tools on top of this LLM ChatGPT explosion puts a human in the loop because it's not really reliable. However, the way I view AI is that in first of all, it is very highly connected to disability because artificial intelligence is trying to emulate all of the different sensations, senses, generative abilities with moving your mouth, moving your hand. All of that is aspects of humanity. And disability is when there's a disruption in a variety of senses or ability to generate motion. So they're very well tied in, and that's the reason that all of the exciting aspects of AI that people are like, wow, this is amazing, are related to closed captions. You have voice to text, text to voice, or text to speech. Every aspect of this is tied in with AI. And so as you get what I call the crossing the chasm or crossing the Rubicon even, it's where you do something like captions as a human being and AI gets better than a human at doing it. That is when we've crossed the Rubicon that we cannot go back on. And therein lies the negative side of this. So the positive side of this is I will feel great the day that I can just put an AI, it will understand what every person said, it will recognize the person, be able to do what's called diarization, where it says who spoke. All of that will be automatic, where it can automatically translate it to any language, when we can automatically have ASL, American Sign Language, but also translated into other languages. That will open a vault of content for ASL users or other sign language users. Will all of a sudden have a massive library of content. It will be wonderful. But the flip side of that, as you get better than human, is you're going to lose a lot of jobs, or certainly it's going to be a changing of jobs, and change is always painful. And particularly when it comes to VR, there's a lot of adjustment that has to happen. So at the same time as you're getting all these wonderful tools, you also have an impact in terms of what do jobs post AI look like, especially when robotics comes in. Because when you have a robot with all kind of sensors and it's attached to a large language model, and you can talk to it like a human being and have it go pick up your groceries, be your doctor, what job is left? Every new technology has brought on more jobs, and it will probably create more jobs, but I can't think what they're going to be, like in terms of the billions of people on the planet. So that is what's coming in the future. That's the scary part, but also the wonderful part.
And I like that. I think that yes, definitely, it will be a change. But I hope that it is my hope that AI helps to assist. With a lot of like the mundane tasks and stuff like that. So, it will be interesting to see how that unfolds. And I, was recently talking about this, and I hope this person will not mind me bringing this up, but I had hosted an episode of our Voscast podcast, which we were talking about accessibility just back in December. And this person has cerebral palsy, and they were saying, sometimes AI, it doesn't always pick up certain speech patterns. So I think that was one of the things where they're hoping that AI does, end up getting better to where it can, realize that those speech patterns, but that there are so many wonderful uses of AI that, not to let that stop. So that's kind of like what I hope to see in the future. So Joe, I share your sentiments, and Steve and Kathy as well. I think this is a great discussion. And what I would look, yes, go ahead.
Evan, there is a Project Euphonia, and then it'll come to me, but there's another project that's connected to it that Google has done, which focuses on data sets around non-traditional voices. So both to understand and to generate a voice. You also have Apple that with a very short recording of your voice will remember your voice, particularly for people who know that they're going to lose their voice. It allows them to have it digitized in such a way that you can sort of do like text to speech in the voice, in the person's personalized voice. And so that's another field where AI is actually, it might be hard in the short term where Alexa may not recognize a voice, but that's going to be fixed. It's being fixed, and there's already technology around it.
Oh, that's very good to hear. And if you wouldn't mind, if you get a chance and you want to share that with me, I can always share that out to the audience. The name
Sure.
of that technology. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel the Alexa example. Sometimes I say something to Alexa and she just ignores me. And sometimes my kids say something and she's like, okay, great. And I'm just like, oh, I see how it is. Okay. So I would like to
Evan,
move on. So
may
yeah,
I
yes, go
may
ahead.
I add on? May I add
Absolutely.
on to what Joe said? There's
You
a
absolutely
great
can.
example and a great story around work with the ALS society where people are losing their voice and they're able to generate their voice and recreate their voice. So,
Wow.
for individuals that are losing that capacity, it's really great. So, um, Joe, I'm sure you've heard about that project and the work they're doing there, and we can share a link with that maybe with the audience after.
That'd be
That'd
great.
be great. Yes, thank you. Just real quick, because I'd like to keep this presentation moving along, and I know we're about halfway through already. So go ahead and do the thing that you did the last time where you take out your phone and scan the QR code. And if you can, this is a fun word cloud. It's what are a few trends that you're seeing in your area within vocational rehabilitation and accessibility? If you wouldn't mind, go out and take your phone and scan the QR code and just let me know. Are you seeing any trends in your region or in your area that maybe we haven't covered here yet, or maybe that we can cover at the end? I would be really curious to find that out. And it looks like 7 people are actively typing, so I'm very uh, excited to see what the answers are going to be here. Nothing to add. That can definitely be one. Yep, using okay to create all text. That's definitely a good one. Awareness, embracing awareness. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick while we are just waiting for some of the answers to come in here is that I think Joe, Kathy, Steve, that we were talking about vocational rehabilitation as it pertains to reentry, and I thought that was a really interesting discussion, just talking about how those two industries are intersecting, and I think that it's both really great things to talk about, especially with employment, and I thought that was good. I see a lot of AI awareness. Accessibility is definitely a trend in general, so that's good to see. Not enough training. I think that's definitely always an area of opportunity. Lack of caution, interpreters. So I think this is all really good stuff, and I appreciate everybody taking a moment to share. Next, what I would like to talk about is changes in work structure. what are some things that you are seeing around remote work and hybrid work, and as it pertains to vocational rehabilitation and accessibility? And I'd like to start with Steve and move around the room.
I think it's fair to say that what those within our constituency all are experiencing in that regard as far as the changes. It's a matter of kind of the impact upon each of those communities. For those that we serve in the vocational rehabilitation program, that rush to remote virtual work was a blessing in many ways and a challenge for our community. The undertone is that I think it's important to call out up front that it didn't change the need for career seekers to gain and maintain this needed skills for the workplace. It put a different slant on it. It may have been that you had some basic skills and the core elements of employment for that career that you're seeking. And in addition to that, you may have had to obtain additional skills to be able to work in a virtual or a hybrid environment. But it did broaden the option for many in our community, so that many folks with disabilities, really all workers who had challenges of getting to a bricks and mortar setting, needing a variety of schedules, that type of thing. We all benefited from those changes. Employers were able to bring new talent to their businesses because of that opening for the hybrid and virtual setting as well. The challenges are also real, though, and that's still that detachment from the business culture, some of that isolation. All that has to be addressed in a way that allows workers to feel comfortable with the environment, to feel a part of it. So now there seems to be at least the emerging awareness that the expectation for many is to return to bricks and mortar. And so I know even in my family environment, my kids' workplaces, that they've been working remotely. Now there's an expectation for them to go back. So that shift back and forth is a challenge. It's a reality that we all have to find a way to deal with. Some positives and some challenges, both I think can be identified.
I'll just add quickly to that. I know that we're limited on time here. So, I think a lot of the lessons learned from, particularly the remote work is that the accommodations and accessibility for people with disabilities, again, went mainstream. We know parents with loud children in the background captioning is a great tool. So there's there again the applications, right? But I also think we're starting to see more of a realization of the importance of hybrid work, and particularly in communities that may struggle with transportation issues. Um, Again, hiring more people with disabilities into those IT fields and building some of these tools that support the ability to work remotely, as well as the gig economy, seeing an increase in the number of people moving into those roles and how we best prepare people for that. So,
I'll add some positives and negatives, like with anything. It was great to see, we were already on Zoom beforehand. I had a dev shop at the time. And when COVID hit, it was great to see that all of the platforms like Zoom all of a sudden needed to put in captions. So we got to see in one platform after another captions come in. Then on the other hand, you have like a friend of mine who is a deaf captions user. She said, look, when you come in and you have a meeting with 5 people, 10 people, and I can't hear any of it, so I have to read the captions, it's essentially like reading a book. And unfortunately, those automated captions are not very, at least at the time, were not, very high quality. So you had to guess at a lot of it. and it's extremely exhausting. So in that case, it may not be better. And then I have a lot of friends who are deaf who are looking for work, and most of the time they really struggle to get the company to pay for uh, um, their own, their preferred signing provider. And I've heard a lot of this. I know it's not supposed to be allowed, but it's just been the reality on the ground for a lot of my friends is they've struggled to get work because they were unable to communicate with their interviewers. And then the last thing I'll just finish with is we are able to move much quicker now. So that means that a corporation can come in and say, work remotely from one day to the next, like they did in COVID, and often kept up afterward. But they also, and for the people that benefited, that's great. But they also change it overnight. And so we're seeing a lot of companies that say, now you're going to return to work and you're not going to be given a lot of time to do it. And so there's a lot of fear while trying to say, hey, my case is a little bit different. Please accommodate me, which may or may not work. But there's a lot of fear and anxiety around it. And so that's some of the negatives.
Okay, thank you. And moving to the next to our next topic, Kathy, I know we talked about this a little bit in our lead up to the show, but recruiting and retention. I'd like to just discuss this a little bit with you and talk about some trends that you're seeing with recruiting and retention in Voc Rehab.
So recruiting and retention inside of our VR agencies or when we're working with individuals, Evan, if I may
I would
clarify
say
that. Our own staff?
your own staff, yes.
Okay, Steve's going to want to weigh in on this. This is a topic that we're looking at nationally. Looking at the fact that it's a unique niche working in vocational rehabilitation, because what you're looking at is how you build that individualized plan and understanding aspects of the medical impact, but also how you look at the career strategies for an individual by also working with business. So there are programs that are funded to train VR counselors. We work with a lot of community agencies. Like I said, my career came through that route. And we're looking at how we really build out those skill sets and how we keep those skill sets current through looking at a number of ways where we could recruit individuals and the credentials that they would need, and how we continue to build those skills over time as they're working in the profession. So again, just like every other industry, recruitment and retention, particularly in this unique niche, is an area that we're really looking at. Steve, anything to add there?
Not from the perspective of the internal staff, but I think by extension, Kathy's led into that also for those that we serve. The same issues, and they're somewhat more complicated, or could be more complicated, because I think one of the challenges that we continue have to try to keep up with is preparing our individual customers for the new skill sets that are emerging in the workplace. Are we doing a good job of identifying work-based learning opportunities? Are we listening to business, understanding the skill sets that they need? We're giving the right access to employment, which could be pre-service academic training, using the best technology. So it's a challenge for the entire community, entire communities of workers, career seekers, without a doubt. Oh, one last thing. And once
working on that credentialing.
What's that?
Sorry, Steve.
Go ahead.
Working on the credentialing, the credentials where we have, the unique skill sets that may not be a degree but are a credential.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to another half step beyond that, is once they're on the job, ensuring that they are upskilling and maintaining those credentials and skills to be able to be competitive and stay in their career field.
Joe, on the accessibility side, anything that you want to add here? And if not, I do know that we have about 10 minutes, so if we could definitely move along. But if you had something that you wanted to add, we could also talk about that as well.
Not really. We can just move along.
All right, so let's go to our second to last topic here, and that is personalization and individualization, which I perceive as a trend in the industry. And I think when we had our lead up to this show, I kind of had like a head smack moment, and I was talking to this about Steve, and Steve was like, well, do you mean personalization or individualization? And I thought to myself, I guess I actually mean both. So and then Steve was we were kind of talking about the core principles of vocational rehabilitation, and I thought maybe you could, Steve, just talk a little bit about individualization as that core principle in voc rehab.
Yeah, and I think Kathy did a pretty good job of setting it up, even as she was introducing information about the program. But kind of bottom line, VR services are driven by the individual's need. A person with a disability is the driver of the employment plan, with the VR counselor being, kind of the navigator, the guidance and providing the guidance and counseling. So, an individual may have, two folks may have the same demographics and disability by appearance, and but two complete different pathways to employment. So that is the core premise of the vocational rehabilitation program. That's individualized services.
All right, so we are getting here very close to the very end of this presentation, and I do want to allow some time for questions. And I don't see a lot of questions, but if you have a question, to everybody out in the audience, folks, please go ahead and use that Q&A feature or button, whatever you want to call it, to pose your questions to our experts on this panel. And if not, I'd like to finish up with one last thing. I hope in this presentation to give back to those who are working on the front lines, at the American Job Centers, at a workforce development board, or what have you, a place helping folks find jobs and career paths, helping them along their journey. So just starting with Steve and working around the room, I'd like to know if you can just impart a little bit of insight from your experience to the folks who are on this call today.
Yeah, we're in it together. Often VR is embedded in the American Job Centers. Many VR agencies are within the state DOL. So we should really celebrate the differences in our expertise, that being the VR counselor and the employment counselors in the job centers, but then share our toys, so to speak. Make sure our points of service are accessible physically and technologically. So that's my tidbit.
To Kathy.
Alrighty. Well, yes, we are in this together, and we do better work as a team. And that's true for the individual and expertise that VR staff bring to support individuals. And when you look at an individual with a disability, it could be someone transitioning from school. It could be a veteran who's acquired a disability after service, or we may be working with the VA on those veterans that have service-connected disabilities, or with our Native American, Alaska Native population. So definitely that cross system expertise. I think it also works on the other side with business. As we're working with businesses together, the more we can educate them and ask questions up front and respond to what their needs are, the better it is, not only for bringing talent to the workplace, but for retaining.
Joe, if you could, it would be great if you could impart some wisdom for somebody who is listening, who is looking to take something back to their role, to their job, to their brand.
Yeah, do not let fear stop you from paying attention to AI and playing with it. I am seeing vendor after vendor come up with really some fascinating tools that are changing the game. So it's worth really keeping your eye out for the latest technology improvements when it comes to AI, and how it's helping assistive technology get better.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I do actually have one question from the audience, and I just wanted to make sure I do my due diligence by speaking out this question on their behalf. And so Jay asks, if our panelists, if our panel of experts could talk to the role of ATP in voc rehab, which I believed, Jay, I hope that I have this correctly, and that would be assistive technology professional. Kathy, Steve, or Joe, if you wanted to weigh in on that question for Jay.
We have AT specialists on our team, but we also work with community partners and other AT specialists. So definitely an area where we need to partner, particularly as Joe has talked about. Technology is changing over time, so that collaboration is key.
Fair enough. All right. I think that leads us to the end of our presentation. I don't see any other questions in the question pane, but I sincerely hope that somebody who was in the audience today was able to take something away, and that this can help them in their job or their daily lives, what have you. And that is always my hope with Pathways to Employment. So I thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. If you are looking to contact any of our speakers today, here is their contact information. You can also reach me at events@geosolink.com if you would like to also reach out there. Steve, I am so sorry that I did not get to put in your title, CEO of the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation. I promise the next time we have this presentation, I will make sure that's in there. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I can't say enough good about just the help that you provided, helping me set this up. And it means a lot to me. I do want to mention real quick before we leave this presentation today with the last couple of minutes that we do have a lot of upcoming training and webinars. And you can look on our website to see that, geographicsolutions.com. A lot of good stuff coming up. One thing I haven't even put on here is that we will have a marketplace coming up, I believe, with Metrics Learning. So please look out for that. But we, as always, check out this resource. We have our client training. We have lunchtime learning. There is a wealth of training and knowledge that we are putting out there into the world. And I would also be remiss if I did not mention that we have our 2025 Workforce Technology Conference coming up in Clearwater Beach, which is right around the corner from where I sit. And we would love to see you there. So please take this information and let us know if you have any questions. Again, my name is Evan Brenner. We have about 3 minutes. I would like to give that time back to everybody. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please reach out with any questions that you have. Yes, this is recorded, and we will get a copy out via a resources link. Kathy, Steve, Joe, thank you. I sincerely appreciate your time.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, audience.
Well, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a great day.